Okay. So go ahead and start. I'm going to start off by introducing myself. My name is Alejandra Arguelles. I'm one of the program coordinators at the Idea Center. Welcome to today's WISE session, which is our workshops and information sessions for engineering students. Today we have Edgar Batts, and he'll introduce himself talking on the topic of applying to graduate school. So welcome again. If there are any questions that you have, please make sure to ask them in the Q&A. We also have the chat open. Hi. And this session will be recorded. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pass it on over to Edgar.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's session. I'm really happy to be here and talking to all of you. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Today, we're going to go ahead and talk about applying to graduate school. And I have a few set of slides for you that I would like to share. So at this moment, we're going to go ahead and do that. As Alejandra said, my name is Edgar, and I work for the graduate division here at UC San Diego. And my my role is doing diversity work around graduate school and graduate students on campus. And I'm also a recruiter for the campus. And I go around and speak to different students about graduate programs in our campus. So I'm really happy to be here. We're going to go ahead and chat a little bit about applying to graduate school. So the first question that before we get started, I wanted to get to know you a little bit and making sure that you have a chance to tell me more about where you're at in terms of your trajectory. So one thing we could try, since this is in the form of a webinar, maybe we can try the Q&A to see if you can throw in there if you're thinking of applying to graduate school, what year you're thinking of applying to graduate school, and to what program you're thinking of applying to graduate school. You can mention the area or the field that you're trying to apply to graduate school. So maybe throw that in the Q&A, and so we can all see it, or I guess I can see it on my end. But I want to get a sense of everyone who's here, what they're thinking of doing. So I'll give you a minute to do that. Thank you. Please keep putting them on the Q&A box so we can see them. Okay. Some of you responded, so we're still seeing some of the responses here. Wonderful. Okay. All right. So let me go ahead and start sharing my screen. We have a good mix of students and students applying for different programs. Most of you are interested in master's related work. I know that for some of you who are interested in the BSMS program, there's going to be some information that is going to be applicable to you, but just know that that program is unique and that the program is unique to our campus. I'm talking about the BSMS program, and I can touch a little bit on that in just a little bit. So let me go ahead and share my screen here so we can get on this. All right. So here it is. And let me go ahead and present. So again, we're going to go into a little bit of a detail on what a graduate application entails. And this is my contact information in the grad division for UC San Diego. And these are the general components of a graduate school application. And we're talking here generally, we're not talking of a specific UC San Diego application in this case. We're talking generally about graduate school application components. The first thing here is obviously you need to have or to complete an online application form. So the way that this works is you basically create an account in the system that the institution has picked for you to be able to have and complete this application. And that's how you begin the application. You go through the different sections of the online application, and at the end, you submit that as part of your package. Also, part of your graduate school application components is all transcripts, right? Oftentimes, if not the majority of times, students are required to submit transcripts for all the institutions that they've attended, including community colleges and their four-year college or university, right? You usually don't need transcripts from high school if you're applying for a master's or if you're applying to a doctoral. If you are applying to a PhD and you are currently, or you're thinking of doing a master's first and then going into a PhD, you would need to submit transcripts for your master's program if that's how you plan to go about it. The third component is a resume or CV. Typically, these are required for institutions to take a look at the other extracurricular activities that you've done, whether that is what type of jobs you've had, the experience related to research or any other type of publishing or any other type of experience around internships or things that are related to the field that you're applying. Okay. Number 4 is the letters of recommendation. And for the letters of recommendation, again, typically they go from asking you for 2 or 3 or 4 letters of recommendation, and we'll talk a little bit more detail about those. Number 5 is the statement of purpose, personal statement, and that is typically the 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 what is required from you to submit for the institution to be able to get to know you a little better, and also the graduate program is able to get to know you a little bit better. And then 6 is the GRE or other tests that are required based on your situation. You might be required to take additional tests, or based on the program or institution that you're applying to, you might be required to take 0 tests, right? And we'll talk about GREs and the current state of GREs under this pandemic. All right. Briefly, let's go over the different types of degrees for graduate school, just because it's just good to go over these and make sure that you are clear on the path that you want to go, or I guess just making sure that you have a better sense of what the types of graduate programs are, so you can frame the conversation we're going to have about the applications based on the different degrees. So the first one there is the master's degree, and master's degrees are typically 1 to 2 years in length. There are some programs that you can do while you're working full-time, and those typically take more than 3 years, or more than 2 years in this case. Typically, master's degrees are coursework based. There are some masters that allow you to do research and have access to labs, and you might be asked to do a thesis as part of that master's degree, in which you have to do either lit reviews, or you have to do some type of research so you can complete that thesis. The final requirement for the master's degree is typically a comprehensive exam or project. The next one is the professional degree. In this case, there are certain type of professional degrees, such as an MFA and an MBA, or a Master's of Architecture. These are very similar to master's degrees, but they have a particular difference, and that is that they include either fieldwork or internship as part of their curriculum. So when you are completing a professional degree, you will spend 1 to 2 years, but you will be required to do an internship. Okay. Typically, professional degrees will be classified, or the word master will be at the beginning of that acronym, and in this case all the letters will be there. And for example, the masters of fine arts, in this case the MFA, the MBA, those are the masters of business administration. These are typically, again, different degrees than masters, because of that component of their fieldwork and internship. Then we go into the whole different category, which is the doctoral degree, which typically is the famous, PhD degree. And this is going to be about 5 to 7 years full time. If you decide, most people do full time. There are those programs that might be taken as part time, but they're less, very uncommon, that those are available. Also, there are courses in the first couple of years, and then after that, students dedicate their time to do research and their dissertation. After they complete their 2 years, then again, it's all about the research and writing their doctoral dissertation. At the end, they have to defend it and select a committee that could be that they could defend their dissertation to. And just lastly here, the comment at the end, or the phrase that at the end, depending on the field, the terminal degree may be a master's or a doctorate program. So a terminal degree means just that that is the last degree in your area or field of interest that you can potentially do. So in this case, in the fine arts, a student who is interested in doing acting, the highest or terminal degree that they can achieve is a master's of fine arts, and that is the highest degree that they can complete, right? So it just depends on the field, and that's why I wanted to mention. For most of you who are engineering, there are always going to be options for you to do a doctoral program or a master's program. I think in the engineering field, there's a different distinction that gets placed into, or I guess like doctoral degrees and master's degrees get put into two different categories, based on also goals that you have and potentially like career goals that you might have. So most students that go towards the doctoral degree, they're interested in either becoming educators, researchers, and potentially go into academia. And that's sort of the path that a lot of students take. I find that in engineering, it is very common for students to pursue a master's degree, and that is typically where students go. With a master's degree, there are various possibilities to where when you go into industry after you graduate and work for a few years, with a master's degree, you will have a better chance of moving, up the ladder in the company that you're working on. And that's typically a master's degree for an engineering student comes with either a higher pay, a higher status, or a higher position, right? So it really depends on your goals. And we can talk about, because all of you are in the engineering field, we can talk about what's going to be the best way for you to move forward. And that's really going to depend. My recommendation is, if you're not sure whether you want to do the master's program right after you finish, you want to wait a year, and you want to do a doctoral program maybe after, or whatever path you decide to choose. If you are not sure at this moment, I think that is completely normal and fine. I think what my piece of advice would be today as far as this topic is seek mentors, right? Seek mentors and people who can guide you towards answering those questions. And I wish today's presentation was more of an actual presentation where I could see your face and we can chat about different questions. But this is in the form of a webinar, so we're not going to have a chance to actually go back and forth. But you can definitely ask questions in the Q&A. All right. So at this point, what I want to do is I want to go into detail. So the online application form, so we're going to go through each of the components of the application. And the online application form, these are just some general, guidelines about the application form. And our recommendation here is to follow instructions closely, to making sure that you have that you have that the form is completed in its entirety, that you make sure that you go and review every single section of the application. Oftentimes you'll find that that online application forms might have a section for like personal information, it might have a section for academic information, it might have a different section um, for letters of recommendation, personal statement, etc., etc. So my recommendation is to, again, go and review everything before you want to submit. Okay. So at this point, what I want to do is I want to quickly just show you what an online application form and how you can create one. And I know that a lot of you who are applying to graduate school this year or next year, you're going to go through this experience, but I want to make sure that you get to see sort of how that whole process works. For those of you who are thinking in a VSMS program, the application for that particular program might be different, and you will have to actually inquire with the appropriate department to make sure that you're following through on what their requirements are for you to apply. Okay. So let me just go ahead and exit really quickly so I can show you. So if we go to um, and in here, I'm going to go ahead and show you the graduate school application in our campus. So just give you an idea of what that looks like. So when you go to admissions, you're able to click on begin new application. And this is the application management system that UC San Diego has. Every institution is going to have something different, right? So typically you'll find something like first time users, returning users, create your own account. If you are returning, typically students will bookmark this link for them to be able to just quickly go and quickly just go here and have it in their bookmark bar or in their bookmark list to be able to access that page quickly. Okay, so this is again the graduate school application management for UC San Diego, but every institution is going to have something different. Okay, all right. So the second one here is a transcripts. As a as a student, you're going to be able to submit official transcripts for every institution that you attended, including, as I said, community colleges and any undergraduate institution. If you are applying to a PhD and you have done a master's previously, you're also going to be asked to submit those. Right now, everything is electronic, so a lot of these transcripts are just submitted electronically to the institutions. So you don't have to do much more than that. Okay. All of these components are going to be different, and there's going to be different instructions. What we're providing today is just general guidance and get you sort of start thinking about these items. So when the time comes for you to apply to graduate school, you can already be knowledgeable about these components. The third one here is the resume. So what we're looking for here to have is typically resumes for a student who is applying to graduate school are maximum 1 page. 2 pages I would say is a little too much. but there are some individuals that might have related experience. So what graduate schools are looking here, they're looking for related experience according to the field that you want to go into. Our advice is that you seek a subject matter expert, in this case, someone who is in your field in engineering and can review that resume for you to make sure that is not only professionally looking and it has been reviewed by the Career Center in this case, but it has also been looked by someone who is knowledgeable of the engineering field in general. So typically what we recommend is that you create different resumes for different purposes. This resume that you want to submit for your graduate school is one that can include academic and also related experience to the field that you're applying to. Okay. All right. Letters of recommendation here. Preferably, we recommend that these letters are from faculty if you're applying for a PhD. If you're applying to a master's degree, we recommend that you can have as many letters from faculty as you can. These letters can also be from other individuals. These letters can be from administrators of certain programs that you're part of, but faculty letters are the most are going to be the most strong, and your preference is going to be a faculty letter. So if you're thinking of applying to graduate school in 1 year from now or 2 years from now, my recommendation is that you start building those relationships with faculty and nurturing those relationships even now, right? That you attend office hours with them, and that you get as familiar with their research interest and your sort of expertise in what you want to do, and hopefully you can build a relationship and you can start getting some faculty um, letters or lined up even now, right? You don't have to have the letter, but just I guess that you have some individuals that you're thinking about. So generally, these letters need to have the content needs to be related to your field, and obviously the individuals who are writing these letters of recommendations, they need to speak to your ability to do the type of research that you're interested in doing, and that you can perform academically to the level that you are going to be required in graduate school, right? So again, thinking about these things when we're going into letters of recommendation. So I'm going to go really fast through these slides. I want to allow enough time for you to ask questions. So I want to go to that in more length. So another set of advice for your letters of recommendation: make sure that you can notify your professors or your faculty members that you're going to be requiring or asking a letter of recommendation, right? That you're going to be requiring that letter in 6 months from now or in the fall, right? So making sure that you give them enough notice and that you are reminding them as well. For graduate school, particularly PhD programs, you need strong letters of recommendation. If the recommender slightly hesitates about writing the letter, please think twice about asking them to, or actually submitting that letter, right? Typically, you want to go with those recommenders or those individuals who immediately say yes and they want to write the letter for you, right? And that is just, I mean, common sense that you want to have a strong of a letter as you of a graduate school application as you can, and that really much depends on the letters of recommendation and your statement of purpose. All right. These are some things that we recommend for a strong letter of recommendation. So again, and I've mentioned this, get to know your recommender. Undergraduate research is important to get to know faculty. Attending office hours is a way for you to get to know also faculty. Make sure that you can perform well in the academically in the courses that you're taking with them, that you can get familiarized with their research, their publications, and also that you can, go straight to the point and ask them to mentor you if that's what you wish, right? When you approach them to ask them for a letter of recommendation, typically we advise a good 3-5 weeks of advance notice, giving them a little bit of background information about where you're applying and why you're applying, and potentially if you have a draft of your personal statement or statement of purpose, that you submit that to them so they have it. And following up after that, right? After you do the ask, these are typically just some general recommendations. So let's jump into the statement of purpose, which is a big piece of graduate school application, one of the biggest ones. Typically, a statement of purpose is going to describe your career goals and your past experiences and how you've been prepared to follow a particular path. In this case, why you want to do a master's, why you want to do a PhD, based on the goals that you have, right, and the experiences that you've had as well. You need to customize it again, making sure that you, if you're applying to various different schools, that you customize it as much as you can um, in the research, specifically in the type of program that you're applying, right? So you're making sure that you pay attention to the small words that mention maybe the institution or the program, and that you change it for other programs, because you could always use a similar statement of purpose. Typically, the questions or the prompts that you're going to get asked to write your statement of purpose are going to be very similar. Why do you want to go to grad school? And what are your goals, et cetera, et cetera. So you can customize it and change it up a bit when you're applying to different institutions. And then always tie your interest directly to the potential advisors and their research in that institution. So if I was interested in going to UC Davis and I wanted to apply to the mechanical engineering program at UC Davis, I'm going to go through that list of faculty and that list of research specialists, research specializations in the campus for the engineering fields. And I'm going to go in and tie my interest in mechanical engineering into what UC Davis offers, right? In this case, and what their engineering department offers and the faculty that they have there. So this is a good way for you to be intentional about message, right? Message and how you want to be perceived when they review your application. Okay. Some tips for a good statement of purpose. Always be concise, making sure that you can address your future goals and your experiences and how they prepare you for those goals. Typically, when there are certain gaps or deficiencies in your experience or your GPA or whatever the case may be, you want to address those quickly and just move on, right? You want to make sure that others write it. That you write it and that others review it for you, and that you can make changes and then rewrite those sections that you need to. But you always have people proofread it for you, and you can make changes to that. And you want to customize it, obviously, for the institution that you're applying. And lastly is the graduate record exam, which is the GRE. And the GRE is a computer-based exam that is offered throughout the year. Now with the current situation of the pandemic, the GRE has implemented a few changes to their schedule and obviously how they're delivering the exam to everyone. Typically, the GRE is divided in math, verbal, and writing, and there are certain discipline-specific exams that you can take. Always recommend to use online practice exams and attend campus workshops or there are certain companies that like Kaplan and other companies that offer practice sessions as well for taking exams like the GRE. right now, the current situation with the GRE is that there are certain institutions that have waived the GRE for certain programs, and that's just because of the lack of available appointments for students to be able to do the GRE exam in person. So again, some institutions have gone in great lengths to actually get rid of it forever and not require the GRE anymore. Some institutions have waived it just for this year, right? So you're going to find a variety of different, I guess, a variety of different opinions and positions in this regard on the GRE. So my recommendation is to seek advice from the program and institution that you're applying to. Okay. And that is all I have. At this point, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and answer any questions that are available through the chat. So please throw them in there and I can begin answering any questions. Again, this presentation was intended to give you a general overview of what the graduate school application looks like and what are the different components of it. But I want to make sure that we get into specifics, right, of what your questions are in regards to applying to graduate school, specifically applying for engineering programs. So there's a question here from someone asking the relative difficulty of getting into each of the different programs, each of the different graduate degrees. Is acceptance into a PhD program more competitive than challenging than a master's? So I would say, I mean, there's different layers that could go into your question. So the first thing that I'm thinking is each institution is going to have a set of criteria and a set of different requirements that might make it a little more difficult to get into either a PhD rather than a master's, right? So the institution specific criteria and requirements might be one important layer to keep in mind, right? The other one is what that might go hand in hand with the type of institution they're applying, right? Are you applying to a private university? Are you applying to a university that is highly ranked and well known in the field of engineering or in the field of structural engineering and is ranked #2 in the nation, and you're applying to the top 3 institutions in the nation, so that they might have a higher standard of difficulty getting into those programs or getting admitted into those programs. But I would say, and I think that's where your question is going, is getting into a master's degree, typically, because master's degrees tend to not be funded and tend to be a master's, a degree in between what could be the last degree that you can take, which is a PhD. They tend to be easier to get in. PhDs are more competitive. And that is simply just because, again, PhDs are typically fully funded. And we didn't talk about funding in this case or cost of attendance for a master's versus a PhD, but just talking about difficulty and how that is, that's just simply a common idea is that it's easier to get into a master's than a PhD, but there are some masters that are incredibly hard to get into as well. So again, it's not a definite, it's more of a generalization in regards to the difference there. There's a question about what do you do when professors ask you to send a letter of recommendation draft? This is a good question too, because there are going to be some professors, and excuse me, let me just turn on the light here. There are going to be some professors that are going to ask you to send them some type of draft or some type of Draft of your personal statement. Some are going to go into, you know what, go ahead and write the letter for me, right? And or write some type of draft of a letter for me and forward that to me. And I'll go ahead and review it, change it, and so at that point, what I would say is do as much as it feels comfortable for you. In this case, there might be some level of trust there and confidence with your advisor, your professor, your faculty, that they might say, I trust you in sending me something that could have pretty much a good skeleton of what the letter would be at the end, but I want to make sure that I can depart from there. I would say that's not necessarily wrong, or I mean, that is just really just preference in each of the recommenders. So my my answer to your question here is, if the faculty is asking you to do that, and if you want their recommendation, you're really gonna have to, write something for them, right? And you might ask, for further clarification as far as like, what do you exactly want me to write, or what is it important for you to see in that draft, maybe? So that will be my answer to what do you do when professors ask you to send them a letter of recommendation draft. Um, there was a question about transcripts and how they have been they have been having some issues with the encryption of the transcripts and things like that. My recommendation here, and I don't know exactly if this is happening to this person that is asking this question, but my recommendation with transcripts is that if you are sending transcripts to a different institution, and these transcripts are going to be UC San Diego transcripts or San Diego Mesa College transcripts, or whatever transcripts you're sending, that you're going through the official ways of sending a transcript, that you are not sharing or sending a PDF document that you have saved on your computer that might be encrypted, and that maybe that's causing the error in you submitting the transcript. So in this case, go through the official channels, because most of the time, asking for a transcript, you're going to have to maybe pay a small fee for some community colleges, for some other institutions, and they will typically send them to the institution that you ask them to send it to. I don't know if that answered your question specifically, but it's just talking about it a little bit. So another question is, are PhD students paid by the school? I've heard conflicting things on this topic. So PhD students typically are funded through a variety of different sources, and PhD students are typically paid by the school and the program in this case. So if you're applying to a PhD in material science at the University of at UCLA, and you are applying to this program, and they come back to you, they accept you into the program, and they sent you a letter of funding, right? Where they explain to you the funding package that you're getting for your PhD. Typically, they'll specify what kinds of um, of what kind of package that is, what it entails. So an example is UCLA might come back and tell you, you know what, we're offering you this package with this much money, and but part of that, stipend that we're giving you is um, depending upon or pending you doing some TA work, right, during the year, or depending on you doing some research or reader or tutor work during the first or 2 years of your PhD, right? So I don't know where the funds are going to come from, whether they're going to come from the university, in this case UCLA, or if they're going to come from the School of Engineering, right? So, or the program. So again, or maybe the faculty. Sometimes that happens where there are certain grants, certain sources of funding that are specific to the department. In this case, the the faculty members and the PIs. All right, let me see. Please throw your questions in the Q&A. I'm looking to see if there's any other questions here. I'll make sure we go through the set of questions that we might have for anybody. Anything else about graduate school? Anything else about the application? Some of you might be thinking of applying in the near future, or might be even applying now. Typically, you want to start your search for programs early in the year, and you want to build your timeline, right? If you're applying that year for next year. There's a question here right here. What advice do you have on narrowing down the focus for a PhD? So narrowing down the focus for a PhD, I mean, if you're referring to the specific, maybe discipline, or well, not discipline, if you're talking about specific research interests that you might have in your PhD, and how you can narrow it down to that what you want to do, I would say it really is dependent upon the program and the institution you're applying to. Think about how institutions are aware that you're not going to have 100% narrow down the topic or the research topic that you want to do, right, in your PhD, that you want to research about. But you might have a good sense of what that is. So my recommendation is that to always verbalize that, whether you're doing that through a statement of purpose, or if you're doing that through your interview with them when they come back and interview for the program, that you're verbalizing that focus one way or another, right? Hopefully you're doing that in the application, because ultimately that's what's going to get the attention of those individuals who are applying, who are reviewing your application when it comes to department. They're going to see, oh, okay, this person is interested in this particular research area, and we have 2-3 different faculty members or labs that focus on that area, right? So narrowing down the focus, you can, to a certain degree. My recommendation is obviously to surround yourself with people and to get as much familiar with the research and what that research topic entails, and hopefully be guided by people that are around you, that have experience already picking a topic or a focus for a PhD. There's a question here. As an undergrad, we don't have much experience we can get with a variety of research. I don't know if that's a question or more so like it says follow up here, but we don't, I mean, if you're talking about research experience and how that can, complement your, or help you narrow down the focus, I think it might be the same person. It's not clear to me here, so I don't know. If you're thinking of research experience and helping you narrowing down that focus, I mean, that could definitely be it, right? That could definitely help you. But again, is not the only thing. You can also again, surround yourself with either a good network of mentors, whether they are grad students or whether they are a PI or a faculty or someone, a professor that you enjoyed a certain topic while you were in their class, right? And that you feel like they could guide you or they could be your mentor. Should I apply for summer research at the target school that you want to go to, or go to industry for internships during the summer? Thank you. So it really depends on what your career goal is, right? So if you are thinking of a PhD, my recommendation is that obviously you want to get and have as much research experience as you can. So pursuing summer research at the institution that you are potentially interested in applying to, it's a great idea for a PhD. If you're interested in potentially after you finish going into industry, getting some work experience, maybe the internship option during the summer is a better pathway for you. And that pathway might lead to a master's degree or potentially to a PhD. It doesn't mean that because you worked in industry, you cannot go into a PhD. It just means that the paths sometimes, um, have certain differences. And in this case, industry is oftentimes, directly related or directly associated with a master's degree. What is the typical distribution of weights among the materials we submit in the application? This is a great question. Thank you. So how much weight does one thing have versus another, right? How much weight does my GPA has versus my letters of recommendation? So in most recent times, the so-called holistic review of your application has become the way that graduate schools take a look at students applying to graduate school. So this is a question that I could generally answer by saying, you be sure that that you can be reassured that there's not going to be something that maybe places um, I guess the weight is very well distributed. That will be my answer to your specific question. Um, but if you want to know more details about maybe what could play a bigger role into admitting you into a certain program, you need to ask the program, you need to ask the department. So in this case, if you're interested in, and I keep going back to examples just so you can visualize how you need to do these kinds of 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 things and how you can contact departments, right? When I say you need to contact the program or department, I mean you really need to contact the coordinator, the staff member, the person who is in charge of inquiries, right? Such as the one that you have. So in this case, for example, you might want to reach out to the program that you're interested at. I'm going to go to the UC Davis example that I was talking prior. You want to call the School of Engineering, the structural engineering program at UC Davis, and you want to find the staff member who is the program coordinator, and you want to call them and be like, hey, I have a question, I'm curious, in your application, what is typically I mean, how do you approach looking at the different components of the application? How do admissions committees take a look and weigh the different components of your application? This is a really good question also for graduate students at that particular institution, right? Because they can tell you, like, you know what, I didn't have the greatest GPA, but I still got admitted, right? But I had this other thing that maybe I think gave me the edge, right, over other people. So again, it is a question that you can get better answers if you just ask the right people, right? So in this case, my recommendation is program coordinators and graduate students. Is it possible to work in industry, research laboratory, for example, Boeing, without a master's or a doc program? I mean, it really depends in this case, in the company or in the lab that is hiring or that is, looking for individuals who have, you're gonna have to really, because this is more of a specific engineering question, because you're talking about, companies that are, industries that are in engineering, you're going to have to just guide yourself by the eligibility requirements for you to be able to apply for that particular job. What advice do you have about contacting departments and professors, especially ones in the campuses during the virtual world? So you know what? Even before we were in this more virtualized and remote sort of environment, um, my recommendation was always you need to set short um, goals, um, and goals that are, in the short run. And you need to make sure that you have that you hold yourself accountable for the things that you want to do. In this case, the first step is reaching out to the professors and departments, right, and making sure that you do it, because we've seen, and that this is something that just happens, that people say, oh yeah, I'm going to go ahead and contact departments, I'm going to go ahead and contact professors, and then we don't follow through, and we don't set ourselves those goals in the short run, to make sure that we can at least do the first step, which is just contacting them. The advice that I have in this virtual world is that you try to insist without, you know overdoing that, in that, that you insist, and that you keep reaching out to them if you don't hear a response, without sending a reminder every 2 days, right? Maybe you send a reminder every week if you haven't heard from department or professor. Typically, if you're not receiving a response, or a timely response, try other people in the program, right? So that would be my approach. In this virtual world, our inboxes are full. There's so much that we can do. um, Not everyone has access to a work phone anymore. um, I mean, if they have a work phone, is because they, somehow they are able um, to connect it to their home phone, or their cell phone. But you know uh, work phones worked pretty well, in the sense that, you were able to communicate with the advisors. If you had any questions, they weren't responding to your email, you can always try a voicemail. You can always leave that voicemail, and then those individuals will get back to you. I'm not saying that's not a way for you to do it. I'm just saying that in the virtual world, typically a lot of people are communicating more and more via email. And we and people in different, in academia, might have just a lot of emails in their inbox. So my recommendation is to just making sure that you can go back and remind them, right? Any other questions? We're about 5 minutes away from finishing here. Just want to make sure that we can answer any questions. So, Alejandra?
Yeah, I also want to just add, the next week on Friday, we will have the Teaching and Learning Commons present on writing your personal statement.
Beautiful.
So this will be a really great opportunity for you if you are applying this fall, or if you're graduating and thinking about applying next year, to learn more about how to structure your personal statement. We'll make sure to be sharing that information on our Facebook and our social media outlets. So keep in touch with our social media so you can know what the webinar ID.
Yeah, beautiful. Ale, so just to finish off, I mean, and echoing what you're saying in regards to taking advantage of the resources that you have on campus. You're a UC San Diego student, and you have plenty of good resources that are available to you. And guess what? At no cost, right? Because you are a student. So Career Services is one example how they can help you put together a beautiful professional looking resume. The Teaching and Learning Commons is another example of how they can help you draft that personal statement, or help you give you advice on your personal statement. But again, just like those programs are, those resources are available on campus. There are other as well. There was one last question, Ale, about BSMS programs and finding more information. Those programs, I would really, really encourage anyone here to seek advice from your college advisors or your advisors in your program and your major, just because it is harder for us to talk about BSMS when those programs um, are still part of the undergraduate bachelor degree experience at UC San Diego, and not, I mean, they are masters as well, but they have more individuals who are in the undergrad advising world have better expertise than we have.
Mhm. Well, thank you everyone for attending today. As a reminder, this webinar will be posted on YouTube within the next week. So if you wanted to go back to some of the tidbits Edgar presented on, that'll be available on our YouTube channel. In the meantime, feel free to reach out to Edgar and stay in touch with our upcoming Y sessions.
Thank you, Ale. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Edgar, again. Okay, have a great Thursday, everyone.